Well, hello there, my friends. If you're watching this video, it means that you are here at the Date Your Wife podcast. It also means that Danielle and I are not, as you can see, here in studio. We're going to be sharing with you this week an exclusive one-on-one interview that I did with Danielle the very first time in 2016 at one of our Warrior Empire events. I think it's going to be revealing, it's going to be insightful, and it was the very first time that Danielle went on the stage and began to talk about what it was like to be a woman inside of this game, married to a man, living the Warrior's way. It's intense, it's potent, it's powerful, and I hope you enjoy it. We'll come back to you here at the end of today's episode here on the Date Your Wife podcast with a couple of instructions. Enjoy. One, because I love the shit out of her, and two, because I thought it might help you guys to hear some of her answers unfiltered. She has an idea of some of these questions, but I'm going to ask her and then let her say what she's going to say. And let you hear the other side of the conversation, since so oftentimes you get to hear mine. You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm so nervous. Okay, yeah, they can hear me.
Yeah, they can hear you.
I can do Don't do it.
Okay.
What's this?
Now you gotta go down the hall.
I gotta run?
Yeah. All right, hold on.
Am I running in?
So we gotta give her
So
so now we're
confused.
back of the room. Go to the very back of the room, and then we're gonna do a table slap to get you like all pumped up.
I'm so pumped!
So you know, this is the one that changes.
I wore all black.
Two black blue, and all her hair events.
It's intense. Ooh, that introduction makes me nervous.
Oh yeah, we need a little 2-clap blue to make her feel comfortable.
Hey, no, I'm in all black. You can do 2-clap
Oh, I
boom.
like it. Never mind.
I'm like,
2-clap blue. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start off with a bunch of questions. We've had some opportunities. We're going to start with the first one. First one is Danielle. A man wants to change.
I need a water.
You need a water. Can we get some waters up here?
Good luck with that. But I guess we'll see.
Okay, so first question. First question is around the topic of change. A man wants to change, but his wife is fighting the change. How many of you have experienced this? As you're starting to change, you have resistance from the queen. Okay, cool. So how should a man handle the resistance to the change he's trying to bring to his home as he begins to implement the principles of the Warrior's Way?
I would say, like, put yourself in her shoes, and what if she started implementing change? How would you react? I think people in general don't like change because it's scary. So I find the best way to, like, I always try and put myself in Garrett's shoes. I mean, I know I'm not him, but I'm like, okay, if I was in this situation, how would I react? So I think change is scary no matter what. And I think that you just, from a wife's perspective, I don't know, I would say you just can't overwhelm your wife. You have to just lead by example, same thing you would do with children. You know, and eventually they're like, he's serious, this is not going away. Like, I either need to figure out where I'm at or I need to jump on board. And I kind of felt like in the beginning, that's how it was with you. Like you started going all these seminars and self-help things, and I was like, oh my God, that's so not me. And then at some point I was like, okay, I have to get on board with this. And Garrett's kind of intense. So, yeah, a little bit. So it's not like he came like lightly. He was kind of strange, to be honest with you guys. Like in the beginning, he would like go to these events and like make me feel guilty that I wasn't interested in it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not me. Good luck with that. And I don't know if any of your wives have experienced that too. You know, they're like, you know, you work on you, and that's great. I'm good. Like, you work on you. And I never really thought I was needing like self-work, but then I don't know, I just realized like there's so much more than just, I don't know, it's just kind of, don't overwhelm your wife, and I don't know.
Got it. So a couple key points inside of this is the commitment to staying with it, because in the beginning you were completely against how I was showing up, because I was trying to figure out who I was, inside of that, and a lot of these guys are trying to figure out who they are, having been a certain way in relationship.
I think I had to figure out who I was too. Do you know what I mean? I thought I knew who I was, and then you get kind of like kept challenging me, and because I'm like, I've got to make our relationship work, you know, it made me look at things differently and kind of reevaluate who I was as a person, who I wanted to be, who I wanted to become. I'm like, hey, Garrett wants to be a better person and wants to change. Maybe I should want to be a better person. What does that look like for me? And even though there was this weird disconnect, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to surrender and like see where this takes me, but I'm super stubborn. So I was like, just so you know, it's not your idea, it's my idea. And I'll just go along and see how this, you know. But I think that's kind of what relationships is about, is give and take. And even if you're not in a great spot in your marriage, like the person that you're with, if they see that, like, listen, I want to, this is for the better for me, for you, for us, they're gonna buy in eventually. They're gonna be like, okay, they're not just gonna quit. You have to give your spouse credit that they're not just gonna be like, well, I'm out and you're crazy. Like, just keep leading by example. And that's probably my best advice I could give.
Okay, so one caveat to this. So at times there was a point in the game where you had to choose, like really choose to be all in for you with us, because I was moving in the direction I was going, and I was committed over time to this path. It was like 2011. I'm coming off Achilles surgery, and we're still trying to recover from chaos as a couple. What made you choose in? Because some women don't choose in, and some women actually choose out. And we've had a couple divorces in Warrior from guys who've been here, from women who said, you know, they just decided it.
I always felt like no matter, and this is just me, I'm like, no matter who you're with, you're always going to have problems. And I just thought, God, I don't know if it sounds better to quit here and restart something and then discover more problems and figure it out then, or maybe I should work with what I already have. I've got 2 kids. Like, at the point when I got to that place, we'd had 2 kids. I'm like, to me, it seems to make more sense to rebuild our relationship than to burn it to the ground and think that this other step is going to be easier. And in my experience, like, I think that people give up too quickly. I mean, there's certain situations where the other partner doesn't choose in, and if a voice comes to you and says, you need to go, then you need to go. But I felt like we were both fighting, and neither of us were ready to give up. And so I think we were both not necessarily choosing in, but it's like we weren't out. We were still very much connected. And it just needs that little piece of connection to rekindle and to rebuild. And for Garrett and I, you know, we got married. I got married pretty young. I was only 20, so then I didn't know what was going on. And we probably, for the first 5 years, we're just trying to figure out how to balance being yourself and being in a relationship, because those are 2 different roles. And then it was like we kind of became roommates, because, you know, we just kind of stopped dating and stopped, not trying, but we just kind of stopped doing all the things that we were dating and started working and doing other things. And we had 2 kids, and then it was like, oh, I don't even like you. And we thought it was like overnight, but it wasn't. It probably took, 5 years to get to this place where, like, you're kind of just a roommate to me, and, like, I don't really like you and whatever. And it's probably taken us another 5 years to rebuild back up to the point where I feel like today I'm like, I genuinely love this man. Like, I'm excited to go on date night. Like, it's almost like we really are dating again. And that's a really cool experience, but it's different than when you're, young and dating, because you've gone through so much together. So you're dating again, but there's such a connection. And I don't even remember what the question is you asked me, but you guys look like you're eating it up. So.
All right. So let's move to another topic. One of the things that was a struggle during that time of disconnection, which occurs for some of our guys, is they'll get down this pattern, and as a partnership, they become very busy in work and very busy with kids, and there's this drift, and attraction starts to die, and with it typically goes sexual intimacy. And so there's a lot of frustration around the sexual conversation. So here's the next question. The topic of sex can be a sensitive one for couples. How did you and Garrett, or how did you and me, finally get to a place that sex was not weird and became something more natural for both of you, since you had spent so much time fighting about the subject?
I think it's like give and take. I was writing a blog post today. I'm like, men want sex, women want time. And if neither needs are being met, then it's like give and take. But at the same time, I'll tell Garrett, I don't know, I feel like recently we seem in like a peaceful place, and I'm not sure specifically what shifted. The only thing I can say is like you kind of have to like let go of your ego a little bit, and like from a girl's perspective, sometimes Garrett would not be like asking or like coming on to me too strong, but he was kind of in asshole mode. And I was like, you can't be in asshole mode or I'm not turned on. And then like there was times where I would just be like, ugh, and like pushing him away and like, I don't know. So then I'm like, I have to be fun and flirty, even if he's at work and whatever. Like it's give and take. Like you kind of have to play the role a little bit. That's just how it is. So, I mean, I go back to all the time. I just go back to my mind. Like, how was it when you were dating? Like, honestly, when you're dating and you're a guy, you're kind of playing it cool and like, yeah, I don't know. And women, same way. We're playing more flirty. We're playing like we're more into it, even if we're not. We're like, I totally don't want to like, no. But when we're dating, that's just how it is. They're like, well, maybe he's going to take me out. Is there a pair of shoes at the end of this date? Like, I'm just saying, like, that's how it goes. That's how it goes when you're dating. And so I feel like this element leaves us when we get married. We get comfortable and we're like, well, I'm going out. I'm going on a date. And I'm like, are you excited? Is it the same? Like, I don't know. Like, is it the same when you were dating? Like, think about when you were dating in the beginning. You probably went and got your car washed, got a new pair of shoes, like, planned it. Now your date night's like, what do you want to do? Well, what do you want to do? Like, that's not really a date. Like, you have to kind of put in effort in order to build that, like, sexual chemistry and kind of give and take and play into each other's roles, I guess. I don't know. Is that a bad answer or a good answer?
It was great. Kind
of like derailed a little bit.
That was great. So transition is one of the things that we get asked as therapy in couples. You and I went to extreme amounts of therapy in a short period of time.
That's how you do
talk
things.
About your experience with therapy, and particularly sex therapy, and how that helped us.
I think having another person in the party that's not a family or a friend is like a mediator. So like literally you'll say the exact same things that you want to say to your husband, because there's somebody in the room. It's like a sounding board. So it goes to them, and then it goes to the husband. It goes to her, and then it goes to the husband. So it's immediately less triggering for both sides, and you can actually talk about things without like exploding. And the other thing too, as bad as this is to say, I think for spouses, like sometimes if there was not a mediator, we put daggers in on purpose, and I don't know why we do that. We're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, because it's an ego thing. And if you're in a room with a therapist or a mediator, you're not gonna, that would be weird if you're doing that. They're like, oh, you fucking psycho, like they would know. So you kind of, it's a way to like say what you want to say without being triggered as much. And Garrett has been triggered. We've gone to therapy and he literally is like, I gotta do push-ups, I'm so pissed. And the therapist is looking at me, I'm like, see what I have to deal with? I'm like, just let him get it out, he'll be fine. He's like a kid. But I thought it was helpful. It was definitely like, I felt like I could share what I was thinking without feeling like, oh God, am I saying it right? Is this gonna upset him? I don't know. But also being tactful, that's another huge thing I think in marriage that goes out the window after you get married, is you're less tactful. So, and I have to work on it myself, like, I don't know, when you're dating, you're gonna be tactful. You're not gonna be like, hey, can you shave your face? You're gonna be like, oh, it looks cute. But you're just gonna be tactful with how you say things. And when we get married, we're just like, hey, I don't like this. Can you do this? Whatever. And we just like don't care. Like there's no politeness. There's no courtesy because we're married and it doesn't matter. It's like you still have to play that role of dating and courtesy and being tactful so that you don't run into that issue of throwing daggers to somebody that you care and love about, like being respectful and being able to open up to him without like throwing daggers and kind of letting go your ego. I almost didn't come speak today. Like literally Garrett, like I asked him a question about technology this morning and he hates when I ask him about technology. He's like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why are you being such an ass? And he's like, I'm to go to an event and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, do you still want me to come speak? And he's like, no. And I was like, and it was interesting because I was like, yes, you do. I know you do, but I couldn't say that. I couldn't be like, you're being an asshole, knock it off, stop pouting, stop having your mantra. But I just was like,
this is what they call it. No, I'm not bullshitting.
It's a mantra.
When I started to get fired up at home,
don't pretend like you don't all do it.
Corner me with, oh, Dad's having a mantra. Thank you to them.
It's true. But no, like and it was funny because I wanted to throw daggers at you and be like, you're being an asshole, da da da. And I didn't even swear. I was like, you're being kind of rude. I wish you would stop doing that. And I really wanted to be like, bah, and like throw daggers. And I was like, no, I need to keep my cool. And then I'm like, just give me an answer. If I support what you're doing, and if you want me to be there, I will be there. And he finally like texted me back and was like, you know what? Everything is like, my ego is telling me like, no, don't come, I'm mad. But yes, I would love you to be there. I'm like, perfect, I would love to be there for you. And again, it's like dropping the ego and not letting, this could have exploded into a huge fight. He could have got done with Warrior Week. Tomorrow we'd have had date night, would have been pissed about because I didn't come speak and blah, blah, blah. So it like snowballs over two people dropping their fucking egos. And I had to do it too. Like I was like, oh, I want to yell. No,
what? Woofu document.
Well, I'm just sharing as a story and example.
Yeah.
But
so talk to me about fighting. So
I feel like I just did.
No, but inside of this, when fights are handled between us, we collide on a lot of topics, and we also collide in front of the kids. We collide, and we have less collisions now than we ever have because we've resolved so many different topics. But as we're trying to do this, like, there are certain topics that if I did not keep colliding with you on, I don't know if you would have changed. Sex was one of those topics, colliding constantly.
It's interesting because you say colliding, and I think that's how that's what works for you. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm being like genuine with you guys. It's like Garrett collides, and I'm like, the storm hit, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the storm's like calm. Like I don't know specifically what I'm doing, but it's like all of a sudden we collide, and all of a sudden it's peaceful. And maybe it's just like a shock and pattern. I don't know. Maybe you could explain to me. I'm just wondering because you're like, I constantly collide. Would you keep doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, does there need to be a collision? Probably at some point. And that's just how you operate. That's not necessarily how I operate. Mm-hmm. Are there any men in here that don't, maybe, that are not as, like Garrett, where you're, like, does every man just collide and they're like, we need to do this? Really?
How many of you collide?
How many, does anybody just kind of get quiet? Like, is that a girl thing? I don't know. Like withdraw? You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, fuck you, Garrett.
Well, no, like I imagine like there's some men that probably aren't as vocal as Garrett and maybe they retreat. I know as a woman I kind of retreat, but I've met a lot of men that their energy or personality seems like they might be like me. And so if you retreat, I'm wondering how that's...
No, like I'm straight
collide?
asking you, do you think you would have shifted if I had not continued to collide? We ended up at therapy over another collision about a house. You said, get a house.
Okay,
and
don't hate me for saying this. Don't
you.
hate me for saying this. But I think the collision is for you because that's how you learn. And I learned too, but I think that's what you're like. You feel like we broke through. Okay. And if I'm being 100% honest, I'm like, oh God, that was really hard. And I maybe shift, but I think that works for you.
So if I don't collide, do you change?
I think I slowly observe and kind of change. And I'm like, what's he doing? What's he doing? Like, what's going on here?
Like over a decade?
It's going to take a little longer, yes.
Like over a decade?
Whatever.
Like whatever change I want in 2 days is going to take 10 years. Okay, so let's continue on some questions.
All right.
So kids... one of the confusing roles that starts to exist in this is
I think you need collision, but not over everything. Let's just leave it at that.
Did you just want the last word on
that? Yep. I win. Just kidding.
All right, parenting. So one of the things that ends up happening in this is guys are getting encouraged to go more all in with their kids. How many of you, after coming to Warrior, find yourself spending way more energetic time trying to relieve your wife from time with the kids? You're spending more time with your children. Raise your hands up. Okay, cool. So in that, it creates a new chaos because guys are trying to figure out the role, women are trying to figure out the role in the parenting game, and it become a very intense game for guys where we're trying to help with the kids but still hunt and produce and trying to be almost caregivers and producers.
I feel like
this creates some chaos. Talk to me about like how in your mind, how do we manage this co-parenting both as man and woman with kids?
It's funny, Garrett's always been really involved with our girls. Like, that's just his personality. Such like a fun dad. Like, he works a ton, but I've never known you to not take time for your girls ever. Like, you say in the beginning, like, you didn't, but I mean, they were little, and I think it's harder for men to connect when they're babies and that kind of thing. But when our kids became kids, you've just always been a really good dad. I would say on that side, from a woman's perspective, one thing that is hard for me is we feel so much pressure and guilt from like being away from our kids, even if we work or if we don't work. And so when Garrett says, hey, take some time, let me spend time with the kids, the one thing I would encourage you not to do, and you're good at it now, but there's been times in the past, like it's like you take the kids, but then you use it as like leverage for your wife later. Like, well, I had the kids all afternoon, so you should be grateful. Like, I'm like, no, I wanted you to be with the kids because you wanted to be with the kids, so don't use this as leverage on me. So that's like, I don't know how, I think it's important to take time to be with your kids, but what was this question specifically? How to co-parent?
Kids, like we learning how to manage the relationship with, as a husband and wife and having children. You and I are both creating, right? This will kind of transition next question. As you've risen in power and empowerment, your masculinity has also risen, right? And so there's this collision that also exists inside of you raising in masculine power. And sometimes our collisions are not you and I as a couple colliding. It's like two masculine energies colliding while you're in business grind mode, I'm in business grind mode, plus we have kids. And we collide, and it's no longer it's not lovers colliding, it's not partners colliding, it's like two dudes colliding.
So what's your question?
Like, how do you, like, as you're rising up, and you have gotten more powerful, and I have created space deliberately to help you be more powerful, and you've chosen to create that power, and the masculine energy in you rises up. It doesn't make you a dude, but you end up, and I end up colliding.
Yeah, there's a
like aggressive
So
guys.
Is your question like finding that balance?
How do you balance that and the fact that we have children? Because in that mode, neither one of us are caregiver. We're both like colliding producers.
You hire
Is this question making sense? What I'm saying?
Way to screw in mind, right? Femininity.
Kind of. It's like as you've become more confident, your certainty in your masculine side has risen. And in that,
so how do you balance with kids?
More.
I think
our collisions are bigger because you have, like, you'll tell me to fuck off where in the past you wouldn't. And you'll take a stand in ways that you wouldn't take before as you gain more confidence and certainty in yourself. And that's a different kind of collision. You were talking about this morning.
I know. I feel like as couples grow, whether the wife works or she doesn't, because a lot of times the wife is managing the home and the kids and like we just take on this like I can do everything mode where it seems kind of masculine, but it's more like cold and calculated. I'm sure you guys have experienced that with your wives. And so maybe that's whether you work or not, but you're not very feminine. You're like in focus mode. You know what I mean? And like you're in focus mode. And so you're just constantly, both sides of the party, you're trying to just get shit done. And so it's like we constantly battle like, and I'm sure like every couple does, where you just feel like you're roommates and you literally have to like take time to connect and like put everything else aside. But I feel like it's still something we're working on. Mm-hmm. Like, just because the more you guys push your wives to change, the more you're going to have to be like, oh, wow, I don't know if I wanted this. Like,
how many of you are seeing this, that the more you are encouraging change, she actually rises in power and there's even more collisions? Raise your hand.
But what I've noticed is, it's like I want Garrett to be the man, and so it's like, it's just such a give and take. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to know when to put the gas and when to put the brakes, and it's just like, it's a balancing act. And I can tell too, when there's times when we're both in like, kind of masculine energy, and that's when the only thing I can say is like, we go out on date night, like, and just chill out and reconnect and talk and hang out. And it's important, like we have somebody who helps us with our kids, and I don't know.
What do you see? Because now, at first it was me pushing.
I think it's weird.
Now it's like you are just as active to push and
because I realize how much you can slip into just like roommate mode. And there's like still love and respect there, but you're like, yeah, I love you, but there's not like that fire. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's not that chemistry that was there maybe when you were dating. There's not that excitement, and you're just like, oh, well, I've been married forever, so that's just how it is. And I disagree. Like, I've seen some of your stuff, AZ, on Garrett, and I feel that spark with you and Carla too. I'm like, that's cool. Like, you can see it. And so it's I think a lot of people have been married for a while and they just don't think it's possible. And it is. You have to literally like reconnect and kind of, I don't know, date night for us in the beginning, a lot of times we would just sit and fight. And I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, I don't even like you. We're paying a babysitter to fight? That's cool. And then somewhere along the lines, I was like, you know, when like the fighting cooled down and we were like in a better space, all of a sudden I was like, I like you. And it was just enjoyable. And the other thing too is like, we could be together as a couple and things were just like calm. Where there's times where you can be together as a couple and things are quiet, but it's awkward. Do you know what I mean? And so you've got to like work on getting in this space of like connecting and peace and like date night. If you're consistent with it, we'll do that. And you're going to have battles and you're going to have battles, but you just stay consistent with it like you would with anything. In my post I wrote today, I was like, we expect to be an expert at so many things, except for when it comes to relationships, we're willing to let that be kind of like a hobby. And you can't really expect to be good at it if you're not willing to put in the time to do so. And we all know, I believe, know what that looks like. We want to ask other people and say, what are you doing? But if we sit back and look to when you had chemistry with your significant other, what did it look like and what were you doing? And try to recreate that. And eventually over time, she might be like, wow, this is fun. This is cool. I kind of like you again. Or I like you more. Or, you know what I mean? So that, I don't know, date night's extremely important. And we were talking to another couple recently, and we were talking about sometimes even with Garrett, like 2 weeks will go by, maybe if we didn't have a date night for some reason, he's traveling or whatnot. And it's kind of awkward when you come back together. You're like, hey, you, like, it's kind of this weird energy where the guy's probably sexually frustrated and the girl's like pissed because she's like, where have you been? Like, but she's trying to be supportive because the guy's working and providing for the family, but it's a weird collision of energy. You know, wouldn't you guys agree? Like, if you haven't...
How many of you have had this experience?
So it's like you want to be with each other, but you're like, and you think it's going to be like the movies and you're just going to like run and collide in each other's arms, and you're like, I kind of don't like you, we should probably go out. Like, it's weird. And so I know we've said this at some of your other events, but like, you kind of have to go back and you kind of have to fake it for a minute, you know? And you can't like get pissed, and you just kind of have to allow to like let go of your ego, reconnect. And if both needs are met, then that's when the chemistry builds, and that's when there's that connection.
So I have, I'm going to blend like two questions together.
Cool.
So I have, let's see, I'm going to take under topic of trust and also the topic of growth. So I have, with building our first businesses and then losing all our businesses and not being able to pay rent, pay the mortgages, pay the bills, and putting a lot of my own frustration on you and violating your trust as a producer, and then getting so distant with you that I decided to make decisions to find that connection somewhere else, and cheated. And then that left you in this place of where, and I've spent the past 7 years fighting to dig myself out of those holes and those stories. What has been the place from your side as a wife on the other side of the distrust from me as a producer and as a partner? How have you been able to rise from that place when you had every permission slip in the world to say, fuck this guy, I'm out?
I don't think I knew who I was as a person, and I was scared, and I don't know, I think that was the cool thing about us, is like, we literally kind of like relived and rebuilt, and you know what I mean? It took a while to build that trust up, and I feel like like just in the last year, I'm finally like, I'm feeling more that calm, you know, like, okay, we're good, we're safe, and things are good. But we were on such a roller coaster for quite, I would say like 3 to 4 years after that I was like, holy shit, like I just keep having to like choose in. But I felt like it was almost like in work when you decide to invest in something. And you're like, oh, it doesn't seem that hard, like whatever, and you invest in it, and then you're like, oh, this is a lot harder. And then you keep going, you're like, oh, this is a lot harder. And you keep going, this is a lot harder. And then you're like, I'm too far invested. I got to just figure this out. And you choose to make whatever situation you're in work out. Because you're so invested in whatever it is. And that's kind of how I felt with our relationship. I don't think I had the strength to walk away. I mean, I was like, had just had a baby, and I was like, and I don't know, like, just having a baby, I thought, I wasn't ready to like let it go. You know what I mean? I'm like, we have a little family. And I wasn't at the point where I was like, yeah, I'm going to let it go. And I feel like I had to find myself as a person. And now it's at a point where we're both like confident and producing. And so now it's in a cool place because we're both choosing to be here, not because we need one another, but because we want to be here. And that's a scary yet fun place to be in your relationship. So yeah, I guess I didn't feel like I had the confidence to really go anywhere. I was scared and I wasn't ready to be done. And then I just kept reinvesting in us and in you and the family.
What had you continue to believe? Like, there were years I was not showing any sign of turnaround. I was just continuing to be fucking lost and spiral out and hang out with gypsies and try to meditate all day.
No, I saw progression though. Like, I saw progression. I saw like some lows, but I definitely, I don't know. Honestly, there were so many times where I'd be like, I think that actually helped me to become, like, find myself a little bit. Because I was like, you know what, maybe he's not supposed to produce. Maybe I'm supposed to produce. Maybe I'm supposed to put on those shoes. Like, I don't know, maybe I can do this. And who knows if things happen for a reason. Maybe Garrett's and I relationship's always like, you know, and so maybe that was my time to figure out who I was as a person and kind of go from there.
So, final question.
Right.
What does it feel like now versus what it felt like in 2009, which was probably right around 9 and 10 when Ruby was born? Like, probably our darkest and the most confusing and chaotic time for us. You know, fast forward 7 years. What's it feel like to be you and to be married and to be in this game living the Warriors way versus where we were?
It's cool. It's funny because I don't feel like I've changed that much as a person, but then when I look back, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So,
what's it feel like today? Like, if you were to describe being married.
It's almost like I'm addicted to the high of growing, and it makes me feel like comfortable is no longer an option. And it doesn't have to be like scary and colliding, but it's like almost like progressing as a person is now like a high. You're like, oh, how could I stay here when there's like the sky's the limit? Do you know what I mean? And it just, now I feel like I'm in a phase with us where it's like at a healthier space, yeah. But there for a while there it was like up and down and scary and in and out and just, I don't know, it was just chaotic. And so now I look at where we're at now in our lifestyle, and the only thing I feel is like just grateful and like humble and just excited to be here. But then I'm like, if this happened in the last 5 years, I'm like, what's going to happen in the next 5 years? And I get glimpses of it, and I'm like, oh shit, that's cool, you know. So I don't know. It's just crazy what's happened in 5 years. You know what I mean? So I feel like life's like 10 speed for us for some reason.
Is this valuable? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to 3-clapper or 2-clapper in just a second.
I got a
3-peat. And then we're going to write down the number one thing that you're taking from this conversation. Like, this is the difference heading into 2017, is that the women of Warrior are going to begin having a voice in what we do and sharing from their place what they've been seeing. And from the founders, which are you here in this room, we're going to start calling on you and giving your wives an opportunity to have a voice with the whole program we're launching called dateyourwife.com. It's like $3,400 domain. Got the idea one value with Jeremy.
And just giving an opportunity for the women to have a voice and to share. And Carla, one of the originals, and to each have, Katie and Deshawn, your wife, have your wives to be able to say, what is it like for your wife to watch you rejecting her forever, and then to watch her step in as the king, queen right next to the king inside your own business, running the day-to-day operations now. That's a fucking huge leap from where you were 3 years ago when you got here. Russ, you and Mika, same situation. There's so many powerful women who are growing with the men in this room, and we want them to be able to hear and to have a place to share and speak. So it's exciting. So
we'll be your mediators.
We're your crash test dummies, and there's a few other crash test dummies who actually went out ahead of us. Now there's about probably 9 or 10 couples that are just willing to relentlessly test the shit out of new strategies with the Warriors Way to take us all to another place. So, with that being said, we're going to wrap up this segment, and in proper Warrior style, my friends, we are going to put a little 2-clap together for my wife. Babe, stand up.
Can I put it on my Insta story?
Yeah, she's marketing. Always marketing, yes. You can. She's like a marketer.
Woo!
Marketer. She's a leader, not a savior. Okay, you ready?
No, hold on.
So she dominates on Instagram and her blog. She's
Wait.
about to put for the first time.
Okay, tell me when you're ready.
All right. Okay, yeah, stand up.
I'll lead it.
You're going to lead the 2-clap boom?
No, you lead it. I'm just going to make everyone see it. Tell me when you're ready.
And now our speaker, Danielle K. White, with a little 2-clap, boom, 2-clap, boom, 2-clap, boom.
Thanks, guys.
All right, gentlemen, in your books as we go.
Okay, I thought I'd throw on my helmet here. I had my headgear and give you the 411 Real Vision here. Yes, I put on the headphones and the microphone, not even necessary, but I thought I would do it here for this video anyways to end this off. Here's the deal. You just got done watching a clip of Danielle and I at the Warrior Empire event in December of 2016. That's here a year and a half ago. That was the very first time that Danielle went on camera to share her ideas around living the Warriors Way. I asked her some powerful questions, some very intense questions. Hope you enjoyed them. Again, we'll be back next week with a live episode with both of us, but we had to throw one in the mix here for you because we were both out of town and did not have the studio close by, and the schedules did not permit. So enjoy, and we look forward to seeing you next week as we continue to roll down this Date Your Wife podcast experience.